You're listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zeno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground Podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Before we get to this week's episode, I personally have to give you guys a huge thank you for our episode last week with Pasha Palanker. For those of you who had a chance to listen to it, all the feedback was absolutely amazing. I know it kind of got a little bit, raw from my end, and Pasha certainly had a lot of incredible things to say, but I got a lot of feedback from you guys on Twitter and on Instagram about the episode. It really was a special one for me personally. So certainly I thank everybody for reaching out. And to all you who didn't reach out, guys, don't hesitate. Seriously, let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. We love hearing the feedback. Certainly leave that review on iTunes. That helps grow the show. But we love hearing from the Hazard Ground community. And we have had more people just offer up their own stories, which is great. If you are a veteran and you have your story, it doesn't have to be a Medal of Honor recipient, or it doesn't have to be somebody who got these major awards or, unfortunately lost limbs or anything like that. Guys and gals, I mean, look, this is about you guys. It's not about us. And so if you are a veteran who served and you have a story to tell and you want to tell it, or you just want to tell about your experience, we want to tell that story. We want to hear it. So send us an email at producer@hazardground.com. Go on our website and click on the Contact Us tab and let us know that way. I mean, there's so many ways to get in touch with us on all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hazard Ground and Hazard Ground Podcast. You guys are a big part of the reason why this show is successful. So please don't hesitate to reach out. If you want to tell your story, or maybe a family member of yours wants to tell their story, you think it's worthwhile, let us know. We'd be happy to do it for you. And a big thanks to everybody who consistently reaches out. One more reminder about our website, hazardground.com. There's that Amazon promotion we have. Once you go to the website, hazardground.com, you can click on the sponsors tab or scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and you'll see the Amazon banner there. Click on it, do all your normal Amazon shopping. We get a percentage of what you guys spend and then we donate it back. So keep going to hazardground.com for all of your Amazon needs. Guys, you're already making an impact. We've made several donations so far, so we certainly want you guys to keep that going forward. We love the responses from everybody. We love the Hazard Ground community, and certainly thank you guys for being so much a part of the success of this show. Now on to this week's episode. Joining us this week is a former Marine sergeant who in his lone deployment to Afghanistan stepped on an IED, lost both of his legs, part of his fingers. His story of recovery is an interesting one, as an iconic photo of him surfaced on the internet as it pertains to the NFL kneeling protest during the national anthem. He is Zachary Stinson, joining us on the Hazard Ground Podcast. Zach, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Zach, I love your story and everything about it. Just an incredible amount of feats that you've overcome. I neglected to mention that you've actually completed a triathlon as well as a double amputee, so congratulations for that. We want to hear all about that. But we also always like to start at the beginning. Tell us how you got into the Marine Corps and why.
I liked working out. Knew I didn't want to do school. Wasn't a big fan of high school, so I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. And they used to do PT sessions up at the mall with my local recruiter, and I got mixed in with those guys, and I just really enjoyed it. And so, I signed up when I was 17, and then left. 5 days after my 18th birthday.
So 2 wars have been going on at this time, obviously. Iraq and Afghanistan are still in full swing. What did your parents say when you told them you wanted to sign up?
They were all for it at that time. I say at that time because since then my brother has joined the Marine Corps, and they were a little less hesitant they were a little bit more hesitant to sign for infantry. So he ended up going motor T. But yeah, at the time then they were all for it.
Now they're against it with your brother, obviously, because of your injuries?
Yes. They didn't want him going as much of a combat MOS.
Makes sense. Okay. Did you know what you were getting into when it came to boot camp?
Everybody wants to ask the question and try to game the game as much as possible, and I was no exception. But you're never really fully prepared for it, and it's funny that they always say that it's the easiest part you'll do in the military, which is I think is true. But yeah, at the time, it just seemed like it was completely miserable and super hard.
What was the hardest part of boot camp for you?
hated the waking up part. Everybody coming in lights, and waking up super early, and then trying to get through the fog of the day and keep going throughout the day. Wasn't exactly my favorite portion, but we made it happen.
All right. So when you talk about, boot camp and signing up for the Marine Corps, were you somebody who was looking to deploy immediately, or was this just a decision you made because you needed a new path in life? I mean, obviously that had to be in your mind, right?
Yeah, I don't even know how to put it. I wouldn't say I was a lost youth. I mean, I wasn't getting into trouble or anything. I just really didn't like school. So I guess I just didn't even know what I wanted to do. And I figured that going into the military, I always had the GI Bill in my back pocket if I wanted to pursue college. My big reason for not pursuing college out of high school was I didn't want to start my life out in debt. It didn't make any sense to me for me to be 18 years old, recently graduated, and then all of a sudden I'm just going to throw myself into debt. That was stupid to me. So yeah, I was kind of more of like, okay, well, let's just kind of figure everything out. And I signed up for the Marine Corps. I got a security forces contract, which I thought would aid me because of the security clearances. And so I did all of my boot camp, and then School of Infantry, SOI in North Carolina, and then went to basic security guard training in Virginia. And then the next 2 years, I was stationed up in Washington State.
It's interesting you bring that up. Really mature decision by you. I think it's a really mature decision to say, I don't want to start out life $100,000 in debt by going to college. We've kind of been ingrained to think about, okay, well, I graduate high school, I have to go to college, which is the path that most people take. But especially when the government's going to pay for it for free for you, they're going to allow you to go to school at the same time while serving. You can get the same degree as somebody else gets, but you're not starting out life $100,000 behind the eight ball. I'm surprised that shouldn't say I'm surprised. I should think more kids nowadays would want to go that road.
Yeah, I've never understood that. I guess, I don't know. I guess I think differently with money maybe. But yeah, it just never made sense to me. And I don't understand why most of the people that I know that went to college ended up getting a degree for something they're not even doing now. So it makes even less sense to me. And the funny thing is I went in the Marine Corps and I've taken some courses since then, but I don't have like a college degree or anything like that.
All right. So you head to Washington State for 2 years. What's going on there? What unit are you with? What's your assignment? What are you doing?
I was with security forces. Shoot, man, I didn't even know what it would be. Back then, they changed the battalion's name in between, and it's been so long, I really don't even know if I remember it. But I was with 3rd Platoon up there. They ran 4 platoons, just guarding our nation's nuclear assets up there. And I mean, that was kind of it's not really the Fleet Marine Corps. It was definitely a lot different. It's a Navy-run command, basically. And yeah, there's a lot of Navy up there.
All right. So when do you start hearing about deployments? When do you start hearing about like going to Afghanistan?
Well, that's the thing, is that you're kind of cut off up there. It's not even a thought process really? because at the time when I was there, or maybe it was just me, but we were just worried about 2 weeks doing our job, 2 weeks off for training, 2 weeks on doing our job, 2 weeks off for training. It's it wasn't like, okay, we'll get ready for Afghanistan. I mean, we tried doing infantry tactics as much as we could, but it just wasn't. It's not the infantry. We're all infantrymen that are doing this job, but I don't even know how to say it. We're not fully practicing it week in and week out. And then the nice thing about it, and I've told a lot of people this, is the best thing about me going up to security forces and being up there for 2 years was that I actually got sent to infantry squad leaders course in Pendleton while I was up there. And right before, I think that was probably about 9 months before I actually hit Fleet Marine Force. And that prepared me more than the 2 years I spent up in Washington.
So when do you actually find out you're going to Afghanistan, and when do you get there?
Okay. So I left, I got to Washington, I believe it was April of 2008. And then I got orders out in March of 2010. At the time, my orders had said, you're going to 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. All my paperwork said that. I checked into Lejeune, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. Whenever I finished checking in to Lejeune, the paperwork says 2-9. So I quick call up 2-9 and find out, like, okay, when are you guys deploying? And they're saying that they're looking at deploying in July. So I was like, well, that's pretty soon. So I checked in April, and I decided to go ADVON. So July 9th of 2010, we were leaving for Afghanistan.
What's your mission? What are you supposed to be doing there? What do you know about it prior to leaving?
Not a whole lot prior to leaving, and that was mainly because I was so new to the battalion. I checked in as a corporal. I was assigned a team leader position with 3rd Squad, and I was 1st team leader, 3rd Platoon. And we were deploying to Marja, Afghanistan. We were going to be taking over for 3-6, who had, with 1-6, had already cleared Marja, and we're kind of in the hold phase of clear, hold, build, gathering census data and so forth. So initially, when we first got in, our biggest mission was just getting census data of everybody that was in the surrounding villages, including our village, and getting everything built up information-wise.
So how much patrolling are you doing initially?
At least once a day, if not more.
Okay.
We're running out of our platoon PB. So we had, at the time, we were only running 3 squads when we first got there. And so one was QRF, one was post, and QRF, rest, post, and then patrol. And so that's what we did for a month. And then after a month into the deployment, I don't know exactly how word got passed down, but basically my staff sergeant and my lieutenant approached me and said that they wanted to make 4 squads, and they wanted me to be the squad leader. So,
are you excited about that?
Not really, honestly. I'm already super new to the unit. So my first field op with them was Mojave Viper. So I haven't worked with a lot of these guys. I've only been working with really my team for 2.5 months. So I'm really kind of just getting in the groove with them. And we're also in a combat zone. We're getting shot at basically every day, if not twice to 3 times a day. And I didn't want a whole new set of responsibilities at that time. I kind of liked where I was. But I also didn't turn it down. They told me that they wanted me for it, and so I accepted. And then we kind of just picked guys from each squad. So we had kind of a squad thrown together, and it worked really well.
Prior to your injuries, did you guys sustain any casualties?
We had one KIA before I got injured. I'm trying to think. There were a couple other incidents.
Right. I only asked that, Zach, just because I'm curious. What did that do to your mindset?
Well, whenever we lost, when we had our KIA, it was very demoralizing.
Did you know the guy?
Yes. Yeah. I was, at this point, I was already a squad leader, and I had my own squad, but it was one of my previous guys that I was a team leader for. And it was pretty much everybody in the platoon loved him. It was kind of one of those things where it was like going over there. We were like, that's the one guy we don't want to lose. Timothy Jackson. His anniversary is actually coming up. But yeah, it was pretty hard.
Do you know how it happened?
I wasn't out on patrol. I know it was an IED. I don't really remember a lot of the other details.
Did you feel like at any point, like if you had been there, you might have been able to prevent it?
I don't know. I don't believe any of that.
Okay.
Honestly, I believe God has a plan for each and every one of us, and that's we're following through with that plan.
No, and I ask only because it's one of those things when it's a guy that you were a team leader with that was on your team, even if you depart, you feel a certain sense of responsibility to them because either you trained with them or you trained them and there's a connection there. And some of that, when it happens outside of your, quote, care, it's like, you feel like maybe you could have done something to change it.
Yeah, I understand that. But no, especially with my experience with IED since
it's random as hell. Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, they're not my favorite tool at all.
So did you guys change any of your tactics after Timothy was killed?
I don't believe so. I know me personally, I can't remember that I actually sat down with my squad and said, we're going to do this, and this differently. No. We were still doing the patrols the way we were, trying to stay off the main paths and mainly ranger file patrols.
All right. So you are in country now, let's see, what, about almost 4 months before November 9th rolls around. November 9th, 2010. Take me through that day. You wake up in the morning. Is it a normal morning? Do you know what you're doing ahead of time, or how does everything unfold?
Okay. So from the portion I remember beforehand, we were kind of on our rest QRF in the morning. If I remember correctly, I was planning on doing a patrol early afternoon. So we had this village about a kilometer out to our east that we would always get shot at from. And so we went through and cleared the village. There were no inhabitants. It was just the Taliban would come in, shoot us from it, and then they could run north and south along this village with kill holes and just do harassing fire, really. Nothing super accurate. But we had it cleared for any indirect stuff or rockets if we needed it.
So to this point, your patrols had been successful in the area?
I would say so, yes. Okay. And so, so I don't even know the time. I want to say it was like a little bit later in the morning, 10 or 11. And we start getting the harassing fire. We cleared, we fired rockets at it, dropped HIMARS. And then my lieutenant comes up to me and tells me that he wants me to do a battle damage assessment, go and make sure that there's no civilian casualties, and if there are enemy casualties, if we can find anything.
Is that fairly standard practice?
At that point in Afghanistan, yeah. Okay. Anytime we were dropping mortars inside compounds or anything really inside compounds, it was always BDAs.
Okay.
I wasn't a fan of this. Well, it wasn't a request, but this order at the time. We had done this scenario had played out exactly a week before. We had taken the harassing fire, dropped HIMARS, and we had sent a squad out for BDA. So a week later, I get tasked with doing the BDA, and I tell my lieutenant, sir, we just did this last week. I have a patrol coming up in a couple hours. Let me go do my BDA then, but I don't want to. It was open the entire kilometer to the eastern village. So I didn't want to just send my guys and we were just going to walk across. But
is that because you had no cover? I mean, you had no, it was a wide open field that you could easily take indirect fire back?
Well, not so much indirect fire. We were more getting direct fire, but yeah. They had already seen what we had done before. We had dropped the HIMARS before. We had sent the guys out to run the gauntlet, the entire clique, go do the BDA, and then they had come back. So they knew, in my mind, they had already known what was going to happen.
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened is, I pushed my guys out. I set up my machine guns to cover the rest of the squad's movement over to the objective. And there was this wall that ran north and south the entire length of the village. It was probably about, if I remember correctly, about 75 meters before you actually got into the village. And so we still haven't taken any fire. So we're basically at the village. And I stopped my point man right before he gets to this wall. I'd say he's probably about 15 meters from crossing the wall. And so I tell him that I'll take point from here. So I go over the wall.
Now, why did you make that decision, though?
So whenever I know it goes against all doctrine.
Well, that's where I was leading to.
Well, as a team leader, that's what I did was I just walked point. Or when I was a team leader, I also had another guy that would walk point, but I would walk right behind him. I've always been pretty good with directions. That was one of my strengths was the land nav stuff, and I just liked being in front. And I kind of never left me whenever I picked up squad leader. I did get scolded on it on multiple occasions because it does go against doctrine.
That you ran point, right?
I preferred to run point, honestly.
Now, just pause real quick. I was the same way. When every convoy I ran, I always wanted to be the lead vehicle. Always. I just felt like 90% of the danger was in front of us, right? And I at least had the benefit of reaction for the rest of the convoy. Even if we lost comms, which usually happened from the front of the convoy to the back of the convoy, between hand and arm signals and, the gunner and communicating with them, can you see the back of the convoy? Can you hand and arm signal? How far back can you see? Stuff like that. I just felt like I had the best command and control from that standpoint. And I just always felt like if anything, especially with IEDs, if anything bad was going to happen, it was likely going to happen to the front of the convoy. And that's where I just felt the most comfortable.
Yeah, agreed. That's kind of the same thing as I felt like I could control more up there because since that, again, like you said, is the initial point of reaction, you already know what's going on instead of being back and trying to figure out what's going on as you're coming forward. You're already got it, and then you're able to maneuver your guys how you need to from that point. So again, I take a point right before we get to this wall. I want to say it was like I said, 10 meters before we got to it. But so I jumped the wall. Again, if I'm remembering correctly, I want to say it was like 10 or 15 meters on the other side. I still remember it. I stepped down with my left leg, and it was like a pogo stick. I was back up in the air. Ears are ringing. There's dust everywhere. And I swear I'm flying through the air in slow motion. Enough time to think like legitimately my first thought was I'm a dumbass. Because that's all I can think about is that I know exactly what happened. I stepped on an IED, and all through my head, I'm just figuring out how bad is this, like what's going to happen or what needs to happen. And all these scenarios are going through my head. And then, so I land and I'm looking at my hands. They're basically put together like they're in a diamond push-up position. They're all bloody. My legs, I'm basically folded in half. So luckily I kind of did land on my hands because I couldn't move. And I was able to still breathe. Otherwise I might have just suffocated if my face would have just landed flat into the dirt. But so ears are ringing, and I can't hear any of my guys or anything. But I can't move. So I just start screaming, tell my wife I love her. Tell my wife I love her. And I still can't hear anybody coming to me or talking to me or anything like that. And then things kind of settled down a little bit. I don't know how long that took. But I remember hearing, I found out later it was my corpsman, but I remember hearing somebody come up and say, he's dead. And I said, I'm not dead. Come and get me. I can't move. And they're like, oh crap, man. And so they got over to me. If I remember correctly, it was my corpsman doc friend and one of my team leaders, Stoll. And yes.
Did you ever do your own battle damage assessment at that point? Did you try to look at your body, your hands, your legs, anything?
I tried. I couldn't move. I legitimately, they rolled me over on my back, and I kept asking them if I had my legs or what was happening.
Do you remember what they told you?
No, they wouldn't answer me.
Okay.
Because I knew from the way that they kept skirting the issue, because I kept saying like
that it was bad.
Yeah, I knew something was bad. So, I right there, I'm laying there working on me, and I say a prayer, ask God for forgiveness, and I just I talked to Stoll. His wife was friends with my wife. My wife was pregnant at the time. She was 4 months pregnant, and I told him to tell his wife to tell my wife, I'm sorry I didn't make it home.
So you thought you were going to die?
Oh, yeah. You couldn't have told me any different. I was 100% sure I was just going to die. I kind of just accepted it. And
were they reassuring you, you're not going to die, you're not going to die?
Oh, yeah, but that's what you're going to tell somebody that's going to die. You know what I mean?
It's always the worst when they tell you you're not going to die. That means you are going to die.
Exactly.
By the way, did you ever find out who said he's dead?
Yeah, that was my corpsman.
Okay. Did you give him guff about it afterwards?
Oh no, not at all. He's freaking on point. So I wasn't gonna give him a hard time afterwards.
Gotcha.
But no, yeah, I just thought I was dead. So I just kind of sat there. I didn't want to freak out because I knew I wasn't going to help the situation because I couldn't move. So I just kind of laid there. I got really thirsty. So guys, I had water on me. I drank my entire Camelback, and then guys started giving me water bottles that they had. I remember asking, Stoll was working on me. I asked him if I still had my pecker, and, he's like, yeah, you do. I'm looking at it right now. I said, don't laugh at me. I know it's small, but it's all I got.
Zach, I can tell you, we've done nearly 150 of these episodes, and that is, as an anecdotal thing, that is the one thing I found out that I never knew from everybody who gets blown up. The first question every guy asks, is my junk okay? Because after that, we've learned everything else is negotiable.
Exactly. They can take my arm. Just make sure that's good.
Right. Take my arms, take my legs. As long as I have my man parts, everything else we can work around it, right?
Exactly.
All right. So you find out your manhood is still where your manhood should be. All right. What happens next?
I'm just kind of waiting there. Just talking to guys and trying to stay awake. I got really, really tired. Everything went really, really white for a second. I forget the music video, but I always liken it to that. There's an old music video from like the 80s. I think it's like Take On Me or Take Me On or whatever. And
yeah, man, that's Aha. Take On Me.
Yeah, is the music video is like a bunch of scribblings, like light stuff on white pieces of paper.
Yeah, and they jump in and out of the paper. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly how everything got at one point. Like it got so white that all I could see was just slight outlines of people's faces. So it just looked like drawings on a piece of paper, and it was really crazy. So it gets like almost complete whiteout, and then a second later, just color shoots back. And after that, it was just kind of just hanging out, waiting for the birds to arrive. So we're still on the area where I got shot at. I mean, excuse me, not shot. Where I got blown up, and they call up the 9 birds are on their way. And from everything that I found out later is we started getting shot at from that point. The birds actually had to go back and pick up an escort, a gunship, so that they could come back and pick us up. So in the meantime, my guys picked me up and put me on the other side of the wall so I have some cover. And then we're now in the middle of a firefight while I'm just kind of hanging there. And then we're just sitting there, and eventually the birds do come. My guys load me up, and I'm inbound for I believe it was Bagram.
All right. At what point in time do you kind of pass out, or medicine? They give you enough morphine to knock you out, and you don't remember anything? Do you know?
That was actually, they put me in induced coma at the OR.
Okay.
I made it the whole way. So I'm talking to, I don't even remember if it was the Air Force or Army. I don't remember really trying to pay attention to what camis he was wearing, but I'm talking to the guy on the medevac. Am I going to die? And he's not answering me. So again, it kind of just reassures me that this is bad. So I'm talking to him, nothing. Then they put me on the stretcher, doctors, and they're rolling me into the operating room. And I'm still trying to talk to people like, am I going to die? Like, what's going to happen? No one's answering me. They put a mask on my head or my face. And then I wake up in Bethesda 6 days later.
And all the times you keep asking everybody, am I going to die? And no one's answering you. Are you getting angry or are you just getting scared?
Not really scared. It just kind of kept reassuring me like, okay, yeah, you're going to die. Like, you're not making it from this kind of thing.
At any point in time, were you able to see, I'm sorry to cut you off. At any point in time, were you able to see any of the damage in your body? Like lift your arm up, look at your hand or anything like that?
No, the only thing I had actually seen was my fingers. I knew my fingers were bloodied, but that was all I had.
Okay.
So I like I said, I had already asked him about my legs, that continued the entire way too. Like, are my legs there? But it was the same thing. It was basically, are my legs there? Am I going to die? And everybody just kind of kept on doing what they were doing, as they should have. They're the professionals, but it wasn't very reassuring to me.
You wake up 6 days later and you are in Bethesda. Who is the first person you see?
Kind of my wife, I think. So I wear glasses. I was wearing contacts in Afghanistan. Now that I think about it, I don't even know where those contacts went to, but I didn't have my glasses on. So for like the first 4 days, I really wasn't very cognitive. I had a feeding tube shoved down through my nose and everything. I wasn't able to talk too well, but it was like a couple days later, my wife actually realized like he can't see. That's why he's having so much issues. Mm-hmm. So they got me a pair of glasses. But yeah, it was, I was so in and out. I believe it was my wife, but even at that time, I wasn't really sure who was who, honestly. I still thought I was in Afghanistan. I would tell like my mother-in-law or my mother not to go get shot whenever they left the ICU. And it was just because of all the drugs that they had me on, all the pain meds. But I was definitely hallucinating a lot.
All right. Are you able to remember any conversations that you have? When is the first time you find out the extent of your injuries?
I want to say it was around a week after. But again, the medicine was so bad. I would literally like ask them like, are my legs there? And then my wife or some other family member would say no. I would fall asleep, wake up, and then I would have no recollection. So I would ask the same questions over and over again. The funny story is the one that actually stuck was the one time my wife kind of was done sugarcoating it. I said something, I forget even, I think it was like, I want to get out of here. And she was like, you can't get out of here. You don't have any legs. And then I started.
Excuse me?
Yeah, that's the one that I remember, like really hurt my feelings and everything. But yeah, so I'm slowly putting pieces together. I mean, the first time I woke up and saw my wife, I didn't even know she was my wife. That took probably
because of the medication.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't have any recollection of anything. So, I think I spent 2 weeks in the ICU, I think was the thing. And the only other really significant thing that happened in that time was, I almost choked to death in the ICU. My hands were wrapped up to my elbows, so I couldn't hit like the call button for help. And I don't know what happened. I was sleeping, and I just kind of woke up and I couldn't breathe. I don't know what it caused it or anything like that, but I couldn't hit the call button. I could see the nurse outside of my room, but I couldn't get his attention. I couldn't talk or anything like that. I don't even remember what I knocked over, but I did knock something over in my room, and he came in, and then they were able to take care of me. But that experience really messed with me. So for the next, I was inpatient for 8 months. So basically the next 7.5 months, I was so paranoid. I always had to have somebody in my room with me. So my mom and my wife would take turns spending the night in my room with me.
Wow.
Basically the entire time I was an inpatient for the first portion.
Let's get into some of that mental stuff, because at some point in time, your wife tells you have no legs. When does a lot of this start to set in? Like, life is going to be extremely different than I've ever known it.
I'd say I dealt with that maybe the first 3 weeks. I don't remember a whole lot of that. The one thing I realized, and this was probably around 3 or 4 weeks. They had moved me already up to the 5th floor of Bethesda, so I'm out of the ICU. Still on a lot of pain meds and working through all that, but it just kind of hit me because before this I had felt sorry for myself and this is so horrible. What am I going to do? Da, 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 da. And then I don't even know what caused it, but it was just I realized the world's going to keep spinning, and I can either move with it or I can sit back here and be miserable. But it really doesn't care. So I just kind of figured I might as well make the best of everything that I'm given and just use it to my advantage.
Any thought during those couple of weeks where you weren't sure what was going to happen, would have been better off if I died?
No.
Okay.
No, I never had that. At this point, I'm still waiting. We're figuring out that, obviously I was going to be a father, but during my time in the ICU is when we found out like it was going to be a girl.
I was just going to go there with you. I mean, your hands are all bandaged up and everything. Is that part of your depression, that I'm not going to be able to hold my kid or I'm not going to be able to play with my kid? Any of that seep into your head?
I don't think I had enough. I don't think I was thinking that far ahead, honestly. Okay. Because that never actually crossed my mind. My hands were bandaged because they had done some surgeries, but I knew that I still had. I don't know. I didn't even know at the time how much I had left. But yes, I knew there was something there. Did any of that bother you? Like, can I just see my hands? Can I see the condition that they're in? Because I feel like if that was me, let me just see what they look like. Let me understand what I'm working with here. Oh no, I definitely, I don't think so. Like, I don't really remember ever being like that. Honestly, I'm very different, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I never really asked a whole lot of questions. Wow. See, I'm dumb enough to ask questions. Well, like some guys will be like, well, they did this to me and they did this. And I'm just like, I have no idea. Well, I honestly haven't even looked through my medical records. I just tell people I've had 35 plus surgeries. I know it's more than that, but I really have no idea. Well, the only reason I ask is because I've talked to other guys on the podcast, amputees, and a friend of mine, Joey Jones, who lost both of his legs as an EOD guy when he stepped on an IED in Afghanistan. He was a Marine. And he had also had problems with his hands and his arms. He's lost some of his fingers and his arm was all jacked up. And I remember him telling me, I was actually more concerned about my arms than anything. I knew my legs were gone. I was more worried about what condition my arms were in and my hands were in, because at least, you look down, you see your legs are missing, they're gone. Like, they're not coming back, but your hands are still there. And are they going to be usable? And how much of a challenge is this? So I was curious if that started to seep into your head. Not really. Wow. I know Triple J. Oh, do you? Yeah. He's a good friend and a former Hazard Ground guest, yeah. He's a good dude. Knowing him, he probably did his post-blast while he was laying on the ground. So. Yeah. But yeah, that none of that stuff really crossed into my mind. I mean, okay. I wanted to know, but I didn't really assume either. I just kind of figured it was going to happen when it happened. So that was kind of it. And then I don't. Was your daughter born while you were at Walter Reed? Yes, kind of. So I spent, 2 months at Bethesda when it was Bethesda. And then they transferred me down to the Richmond VA. Okay. Because this was January of 2011. Because the war was still going on and there were so many guys getting injured, I wasn't as critical anymore as a lot of the other guys. Right. So they really needed my room. They needed bed space, sure. Yeah. So they moved me down to Richmond for 2 months. And then, so my wife was so pregnant, we kind of hit, I think it was like the 8 month mark. they shipped me back up to the old Walter Reed because they didn't want the baby born down in we didn't want the baby born down there either at the VA. So we went up to the old Walter Reed, and I was an inpatient there until Olivia was born.
Okay, so when your daughter is born, like, what condition are you in? Or you're able to hold her, obviously?
Yeah. That was a mess in itself.
Why?
So I have been an inpatient up until this point. I for the first 6 months of my injuries, I had an X-Fix. Well, so I'll rewind here in a little bit, and I guess you can edit it or however you need to. So when it's all said and done, injuries are a smashed pelvis, amputations of both legs above the knee, and then I'm also no thumb on my right hand. My right middle finger is down to the first knuckle, and then my left hand I have at the first joint on the thumb. It's amputated to that point, and then I have the first joint on my left ring finger. My hands actually took a lot of occupational therapy to actually get the movement back and everything like that. But so during this time at the VA enrichment and everything, they worked on my hands. We got the X-Fix removed. So I move up to Walter Reed with literally I can just start rolling over on my stomach. I haven't been on my stomach in 6 months.
Wow.
So all this is happening, and then I'm getting ready to be a father. So the doctors actually told me that the plan was to release me when my daughter is born. And I petitioned and I tried so hard, and I talked to every person I could that I did not want to get released the same, like when my daughter was born. I said, just keep me in here for another week, because I mean, luckily I live in Pennsylvania, so we were 2 hours with traffic away from the old Walter Reed. I mean, yeah, right. The old Walter Reed in DC. So we had family, but it was just going to be so much on my wife to take care of me, because I'm still on these medications and everything. I'm barely mobile. And they wanted to just basically, okay, well, you're having a new baby. Well, what's another amputee to throw in there? And needless to say, our cries went unheard, basically. So they did release me the same day my daughter was born, and that was kind of crazy. Wasn't a complete disaster. My mother-in-law came and stayed with us in our little hotel room at the Malone House at the old Walter Reed, and basically, I mean, helped my wife, helped me, and everything that we needed to do, because my wife couldn't even lift anything heavier than the baby for, I think it was like the first week or two.
So life is now obviously different. What do you find your biggest challenges at this point?
Only thing that comes to mind is just trying not to destroy stuff with my wheelchair. At that point, I mean, we're staying in a little room, and I'm in one of these bigger power chairs, and I'm running over everything, and all that is happening. Trying to get to therapy, waking up in the morning and feeling like a ton of rocks. But when I look back at it, I mean, I just wasn't in the right state of mind, but there wasn't really a super big obstacle that I can think of. Like, if I had to say anything, I was just like, I wasn't anywhere close to the recovery I needed to be. My mind just wasn't right. And I'm still like that. I feel like I look back a year ago and I was in a different mental state than I am now. So I feel like that's still something that's completely improving on me.
Now that you've obviously, been dealing with this for several years, where are you in reference to what is still difficult and what comes easy?
There's obviously I have the physical challenges with difficulties climbing ladders, or I don't know, reaching the top shelf. It's just little stupid stuff, but I try not to let stuff get in my way. And then when given a challenge, I try to figure a way around it or conquer it straight out. That's kind of what keeps me going at this point. And that's why I signed up for the triathlon and everything like that, is just to see what I can do, push myself and see what else is out there, I guess.
I need to ask you about the iconic photo of you along with Team USA Basketball as a W amputee using your arms to stand during the national anthem, and how that photo sort of rolled itself into the Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem, and you getting some sort of national recognition for it. Kind of take me through your surprise. One, that, I mean, that photo was in 2012 for people who don't know, and obviously the Colin Kaepernick thing was 2016, so it was 4 years later. But let's just go back to the game itself. Was it a reaction for you? National anthem came on. I don't care. I'm just going to find a way to stand up.
Yeah. I mean, that's, in all honesty, a big portion of it was I was in uniform. I do it now, but at that point, it was, and I kind of did it without knowing, but being in uniform, it made it more of an important thing for me to stand up. And the funny thing is I'm not the only one. I mean, I'd seen triple amputees at that point do it, standing up for the national anthem using their arms and a prosthetic. So I didn't think anything was crazy or motivating or anything about it. I was doing what you do during the national anthem. And yeah, it was kind of funny. It's pretty crazy even to this day, because I'm not big in social media. I have Instagram now. I just got that like a year and a half ago. But welcome
to 2019, by the way.
Yeah. Well, when I got blown up, I had Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I got blown up, and we were just having too much of an issue. It was kind of overwhelming. So me and my wife actually just got rid of Facebook. So I think that was like 2 or 3 months after I'd already gotten injured. So we don't have any social media at this time. And this picture, I didn't even know a picture got taken. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing people at like the hospital, or friends are texting me and saying like, "You're all over the internet." And so they,
and you go, like, "What's the internet?"
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had to mess with you a little bit. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's all good, man.
So, all right. So telling you you're all over the internet, and your reaction is what?
I just thought it was funny. I always just went through and read the comments. In all honesty, it kind of amused me. I thought it was cool. I was glad. I was seeing that people were ticked off that I was doing it, or they were thought it was so motivating, which I was glad to see. But it was crazy to see how one picture gave so many different emotions and reactions.
Wait, people were mad that you were doing it? They were ticked off? Like
there were people that were saying, it might have been even after Kaepernick or something, but literally I would look at the comments and it would just see all this craziness. And it would make me laugh. I remember reading once where somebody had thought that I had committed suicide because they had seen the picture and commented like, "Didn't this Marine take his own life?" or something like that.
That's the second time somebody thought you were dead, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just weird that, and then whenever, especially after compared to Kaepernick, you were getting so many of these, "Oh, well, this and this and this," and it was just nuts. It was actually kind of funny. So when the picture with Kaepernick blew up, Fox News actually called me. I don't even remember what year it was. I guess, what was that, like 2016?
16, yeah.
I was actually up in Maine on a bear hunt. And so this person, I don't even remember the name or what it was for, but I just remember they were from Fox News, but they called me and said, we wanted to get your reaction about what's happening. And I said, "Well, I'm up in Maine." And she said, "Well, we don't have a station up in Maine." I said, "Well, I'm in a bear hunt, so I wasn't going to really go to a station anyway." Like, it didn't even cross my mind that I would actually leave my bear hunt just to do this story. But she asked me my thoughts on it, and I told her, I said, he's more than welcome for his opinion. That's why we fight. That's why we have the freedoms that we do in this country. But I don't have to agree with it, and I don't. I feel like the national anthem is something that is sacred for this country, and we respect it. If they want to protest, I think there's much better ways that football players could protest. Personally, I mean, they're making enough money; they could be able to give it out a little bit more then. But
see,
that was kind of.
I think the unifying theme there is that you, like me, he's allowed to do what he wants. Like, no one is saying he can't, and none of us ever believe that he can't. Whether we believe he should or not is a different discussion, but he's exercising a right that we are fighting to protect. And to that end, I think that's the overarching message, no?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's the same freedom that allows me to say that he's an idiot and I don't have to watch football.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's more than welcome to his opinion. I just didn't agree with it for the national anthem.
So how does all that die down? Does it just go away? Or, I mean, was it a quick flash in the pan and went away, or did it kind of linger for you?
Honestly, it was kind of just a quick flash in the pan. Up until that point, even the picture had kind of died down. I would, like I said, I would get texts from friends saying like, "Oh, you're all over the internet again," and then it kind of died down. And then Kaepernick happened, and it picked back up. And friends were texting me again, like, "Oh, you're here all over the internet, sending me stuff, reading comments," and then it just kind of went away.
Is that picture, by the way, on your Instagram?
I have not posted it.
Oh, okay. No,
my wife actually hates that picture.
Why?
She says she's seen it so many times. She says it is not the best representation of you. And I said, oh, it's all good.
Interesting. All right. So you have gotten through all this, and the idea of a triathlon pops up. How, when, and why?
So, okay. So again, going way back, at the hospital, there's so many different forms of therapy. You want to know, like, Walter Reed was incredible for this. I mean, you want to skydive, somebody can hook you up with skydiving. It might not be through the hospital, but you can do it. Sled hockey, wheelchair basketball, anything and everything. And, I tried a couple things and they weren't really my cup of tea. And then I got into hand cycling. So it kind of took off from there like crazy. I did the Marine Corps Marathon in 2012 with Achilles Freedom Team. It's a nonprofit, and they do all these hand cycling events, marathons throughout the country. And the Freedom Team is solely just wounded vets with a couple of adopted Boston Marathon bombing victims as well. But so I did my first Marine Corps Marathon with them in 2012. Mm-hmm. I did it in an hour and 45. I did really well.
On a hand bike, obviously?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I did really well. And everybody, some people for the team were like, you really should stick with this. Like, you're doing really well. And I don't know what happened, but like a switch flipped in my head that said, okay, well, I don't want to make this something that I don't want to like, because I'll be doing it so much. So I kind of just stopped doing anything and didn't really think anything of it. And then back in like 2000, I want to say it was like summer of 2016, I just kind of got a wild hair and said, I want to do another marathon. So I contacted Achilles and got back with them. I did Marine Corps Marathon again. I qualified for Boston. So I did Boston in the spring. And then the next year I did another marathon. And basically, like right now, I think I'm at 10 marathons. But as I'm training for these marathons and I'm riding with friends back here in Pennsylvania, I'm saying, like, I'm telling them that I just want to push myself and try something, kind of step out of my comfort zone and just try something crazy. And another Marine that I ride with, he does Ironmans. And he was saying, well, this is what I do. You should try it. And I think you could finish it. And I was like, oh, no. I just kind of thought about it for a little bit and kind of just kept telling people, oh, yeah, I'll do it. Maybe I'd like to work up to that, whatever. And then about 6 months later, which was last December, I just got a wild hair and I decided for my 30th birthday, I wanted to do a full Ironman. So I went on Ironman's website, found a race that was close to where I live, close to my 30th birthday, and signed up. And then just so everyone can fully understand, when I signed up for this race, I didn't have the wheelchair needed for the run portion, had never sat in it. So I so I had never done the running portion, and I didn't know how to swim laps. Like I float, I wouldn't drown in water, but I had not attempted to swim without legs. And so I signed up for a full Ironman without knowing how to swim or run. And yeah, I signed up. I went to the pool, swam a mile. It took me an hour and 20 minutes. And I thought, I'm in real big trouble, because the cutoff for the swim, I think, was like 2 hours and 20 minutes after the last person enters the water. So I was like, I'm going to get disqualified in the first event. And so after that, I just kind of took a couple steps back. I put on floaties and figured out how to swim.
Wow. Were you surprised you were able to do it?
I mean, if I set my mind to something, I'm pretty sure I could do it. I guess I'm surprised at how well I was able to get. I mean, I went from an hour and 20-minute mile to, I think my best time so far has been a 32-minute mile.
That's amazing.
That's unreal. I mean, that's a pool. So, I mean, open water was a lot different, and I'm still working on trying to tackle open water. But yeah, the issue I was having was whenever I would do my freestyle stroke without any buoyancy or anything, just going in like a swimsuit, when I went to breathe, my entire body would flip over. So I'd end up on my back almost.
Okay.
So the way I combated that was I put on a float belt, and I swam with that for a month, kind of got build up my upper body with the swimming strokes and everything. And then when I felt like that was getting a little easy, then I ditched the belt and went to a pool buoy, put that between my legs. And that was kind of difficult since I only have about like 6 inches of femur on my right side. But I kind of squeezed it in there, and that gave me enough flotation in my trunk. And I swam like that for a month. And then someone recommended some buoyancy shorts. So I ordered a pair from Roca and started swimming with those. And that's what I used whenever I actually did the full Ironman.
Physics is a bitch, huh?
Yeah, I know.
When you cross the finish line, when you complete the triathlon, first thought in your head?
I said a prayer again. I just thank God for the opportunity to do this. It was something so far-fetched to me that I really didn't even think it was going to happen. I mean, when I signed up for it, that was the one sole goal. I mean, I worked and worked and worked from January all the way up until July to make sure I was in the best physical shape and to understand what was happening and be the best I could be. But it was such a daunting task. When I signed up, I had no knowledge of that type of race. So I signed up for like one of the toughest races, I believe, in North America, whether you're a hand cyclist or not, just because of the elevation that's involved and the area it is. I didn't know this signing up. I just picked it because it was close by. But Lake Placid, I think it was like over 7,000 feet of climb. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's all on my arms. So it was very difficult, very straining. But yeah, whenever I actually got to the point where I was crossing the line, I was like, I couldn't believe that it had actually happened.
What was more physically demanding and what was more mentally challenging? Overcoming your injuries and getting back to life that you consider normal, or the triathlon?
Injuries.
Why?
Mentally. It was just, there were just so many times when I just wanted to give up because things weren't working out. In my head, I liken the hospital life and all the time that we were doing at the hospital like high school. Granted, everybody's injuries are different, but you know the guys that you kind of got to the hospital around the same time, and on the outside, they have the same injuries as you. So you're a double amputee, he's a double amputee. But he's up in legs and walking within a month, and you're still in a hospital bed. And I was one of the guys that I would get into legs, and then I would have an issue, and then I'd be out of legs for 2 weeks. Then I'd get back into legs, have another surgery, I'm out of legs for a month. So it had worn on me so much that like, why am I not where they are, kind of thing? Why can't I just get in the legs? Why can't we just keep moving forward? And it was very frustrating having all those setbacks. And and to be able to finally just be able to put the legs on. I got to a point in January 2012 where I was able to get in the legs and able to stay in them. And I worked my way up to knees, and finally was able to retire. And I retired end of November 2012, but we left the hospital in October. And that was such a relief to be able to leave the hospital life and finally get back to normal life back here in PA.
Now, have you tried prosthetics and that whole route, or no? It's not possible for you.
No, I do wear prosthetics.
Okay, you do.
It was just I was having so many issues just because of the lack of length I have on my right side.
Right, yeah, you'd mentioned that, so I was curious if you were able to actually be fitted for one.
Yeah, I don't wear, I wear like basically like a set of beginner legs now. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like my everyday legs, just because they're easy. I throw them on and I can go to the gym or go do whatever I need to do. And if I wear my knees, which I haven't worn in quite a while, I have to wear a belt, and it's a lot more uncomfortable, and I really just don't like them. So I don't wear them.
What's the hardest thing about day-to-day life being a double amputee?
I don't know. For me, maybe the time. Like if I want to be in my wheelchair and use my my lift, it takes a little bit longer. Trying to go places whenever it's a busier time of day, trying to find a handicap parking spot so I can use my lift, that can be a little bit more difficult. But I mean, in all honesty, I really don't try to complain too much about it. I just kind of live my life. I mean, I look on the bright side. The last time anybody ever asked me if I wanted to go for a run?
When?
It's been since 2010.
No.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But you know what I mean? Like, no one asked me to go for a run. Nobody asked me to work out legs at the gym. There's the good with the bad. Sure.
Yeah. You only had a short time in the Marine Corps. Is there anything you miss about it? Anything you wish different?
I do miss the Marine Corps. I tell everybody I'm to this day, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, because I got really lucky and I was good with the first job I ever really had. Whether I would have stayed in for the full 20, I mean, that was the plan, but stuff happens. So I can't really guarantee that that's what would have happened, but I do miss being around. It's kind of fun. I got to go down to Lejeune last year and pin my brother. He picked up NCO.
Awesome.
And it was just, I mean, me and my wife, we miss that part of our lives. I mean, we were both fresh out of high school. Well, she was fresh out of high school. I was already been out of high school for a year. But, I mean, we miss that life of just being young and no kids or anything. I mean, we didn't have any money, so we just go to the beach every weekend because there was nothing else we could do. And we had bought a house down there, and that was our first house, and we had a lot of memories there, and it was a good time.
If you asked your wife, what's the biggest difference between Zach Stinson before the accident and Zach Stinson after, what would she say?
I don't know on that, honestly.
Well, you'll have to ask her then.
I will. We got together in high school. I was a senior, she was a junior, and I mean, we somehow lasted the entire 2 years I was in Washington State. We basically fought every night. I wouldn't recommend a long distance relationship, even though we made ours work. And we've been able to grow together throughout our time together, which I think has been a very valuable part of our lives, is being able to just share these experiences that most people don't share these days. And even after injury, I mean, there were times where, like I said before, I just wasn't there mentally. I mean, she'll tell you some stories of me just playing on an iPad for 4 hours at a time, just sitting on the couch and not even saying a word. And that's the truth, is that's where I was at one point. At that time, I thought that was normal. I thought that was an okay thing to do.
You never had any thoughts of suicide?
No.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, I've been very blessed. Again, I feel like there's a lot of guys up there, maybe with a lot more. They have their legs or anything, but they battle a lot more demons than what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been extremely fortunate.
Your daughter is how old now?
8,
okay.
And we actually had so the blast basically gave me a vasectomy in a way. So we had to do in vitro fertilization for my second daughter.
Okay, so you do have another child. Okay.
Yes, so she is 4 now.
So
I have
when your first daughter started asking questions about your legs, what did you tell her?
I mean, we've never lied to my daughter. Now, other kids that ask me on the street, I just tell them I didn't eat for my vegetables. But I mean, I've never hid anything from my daughter. It's actually, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we're at the house and my daughter, I'm just dad. You know what I mean? Like
right.
She hasn't asked a whole lot of crazy questions or anything like that. And if she asks, I tell her. But last year I went and spoke at her school, and she was raising her hands and trying to like ask all these other questions. I was like, you get to ask these questions all the time. Let some other kids do it.
And did your younger daughter ask any questions?
She's starting to.
Right.
It's starting to hit her. We were actually at dinner. It's probably been about 3 months ago, but we were at dinner one night, and she asked what happened to my hand because I have a skin graft on my arm and
right.
my fingers are missing. And she asked, and we play around with her so much. I just kind of said snake bite without even thinking. Like I just said, I got in a fight with a snake. And my wife was like, no, you need to answer her. Like she's legitimately asking. And so like I turned to her and we sat down and just kind of answered whatever questions. And she didn't have any issues with it. But it's just, I just kind of, whenever they're comfortable with, I tell them. And they kind of understand my limitations too. It's kind of funny. They know if they want to get away from me, they go run into the grass.
I get the sense that your kids have your disposition and the fact that it doesn't faze them. You know, I mean, kids in their rawness and innocence, you know, when they realize that you're missing legs and why, it might hurt them. It might hurt their feelings or, you know, recognizing the difference between people with legs and without. You know, I have kids, I have 4-year-old twins. And so, you know, they say the darndest things. And when something hits them, you know, it's like all of a sudden a recognition that there are different people in this world. But, you know, I think it's great that they have such a very matter-of-fact disposition as you describe it. And that's just dad, you know, that's the way you want it to be. It's just dad. It's not dad without legs. It's just dad.
Exactly. Well, actually, like, if kids ask me and if I tell other kids like, oh, I didn't eat my vegetables, my oldest will be like, no, he didn't. He was in Afghanistan fighting and he stepped on a bomb and he lost his legs. And she kind of is like, Dad, quit being an idiot kind of thing.
Zach, I mean, it's amazing. You have such a great spirit and kind of aura about you. I can hear it, you know, in your voice. And you've said several times how blessed you are. And I think it's amazing that you feel that way. I mean, nobody would look at you sideways if you kind of, in a sense, felt like, hey, I got a raw deal. I'm just living life the best I can. But I don't think anybody would look sideways at you. I think you have such a inspiring and refreshing view on everything that's happened to you.
Oh, I try to. It's like I said before. I mean, there's people in this world going through a lot more difficult things than I am. And if somebody can look at me and be like, well, you're such an inspiration whenever I'm literally just living my life, then I'm more than happy to do it. So they can be like, oh, well, maybe things aren't so bad, you know, and if you look at the bright side of everything I'm here because, I'm guessing you saw the picture or might have seen something about me that was like, okay, well, maybe we should talk to this guy. And it was a big factor was probably like, okay, he got blown up. I've spoken to churches. I've spoken to my kids' schools. I've reached so many more people than I ever would have if I had legs. And who knows if I hope I'm inspiring people or helping people through tough situations that if they have them, just to let them know that everything's okay. You know, it's in God's hands. There's a time and a place, and I look at every day since that day as a blessing. You know, if I die tomorrow, I was supposed to die 9 years ago. and I didn't. I've been able to put my kids on the bus. You know what I mean? See her first day of school, see her lose her first tooth, and each one of those little moments is very, very special.
And God willing, you'll walk them down the aisle one day, even without legs, and that is probably going to be a beautiful moment for you, to say the least. So,
brother, I think about that. It literally, like, I start tearing up. Yep. I truly do.
That's awesome.
I don't think I'm ready for that yet.
Well, I know you're not ready. I don't think any dad ever is. Knock on wood, thankfully I have boys, so I don't have to go through that, but I empathize, or sympathize rather, from that standpoint. But Zach, honestly, thank you so much for being so open. Thank you for being so real, and the message that you got across to all of our listeners, I think is such an important one. But certainly thank you for being part of the Hazard Ground.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
You've been listening to the Hazard Ground Podcast, hosted by Mark Zeno and produced by Matt Pasquarella. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at hazardgroundpodcast@gmail.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.